Good evening. I'm Kari Akins with the League of Women Voters of Cheyenne, and we are here tonight for a primary election candidate forum for the candidates for House District 12 and House District 43. The race for House District 12 has two candidates, and we have one of those candidates here with us tonight. And the race for House District 43 has two candidates, and we have both of those candidates here tonight. Candidates who were unable to attend were offered an opportunity to provide a statement, but we did not receive a statement from Clarence Stivar, who is not joining us tonight, but we are happy to have the other candidate for House District 12, Derek Goldfuss, as well as the two candidates for House District 43, Clayton Mills and Dan Zwanitzer. So we will start off with introductory statements from each candidate. You'll be given 2 minutes to make these statements. And we will go ahead and we will start with the candidate for House District 12, and that is Derek Goldfuss. Mr. Goldfuss, go ahead. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. So I'm Derek Goldfuss. I've lived in Cheyenne for the past 4 years, but lived in Wyoming close to Cheyenne for about 20. As far as my experience goes, I've got student government under the belt for a few years. I ran everything up to the presidency in there. And oh, sorry, I saw a name change on my thing and got distracted. Other than that, I've had a bit of volunteer experience or services back when I was younger. The summers were always spent with the NCOA, helping out at Cheyenne Frontier Days, Greek Fest, and cleaning up the disc golf course. They did some others, but those ones were every year. And what motivated me to run is, well, some people in my district brought it up to me, and I considered it. Almost considered it too long and missed the time to actually put my name in the hat. But I decided it would be something worthwhile and something enjoyable, as I sincerely enjoyed my time in student government. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goldfuss. And now we'll go to our candidates for House District 43, and we'll start with Mr. Zwanitzer. You can make your opening statement now.
Good evening, and thanks to the League of Women Voters for hosting this. Every election cycle, I always enjoy coming on. Again, Dan Zwanitzer, I represent District 43. I've been in that position since 2005 and still considered an immense honor and privilege to represent the people of Eastern Cheyenne and South Central Laramie County. I'm the current chairman of the Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions Committee, so work a lot with election law, utility law, and a lot of local government issues. I did grow up here in Cheyenne, Baggs Elementary, Care Junior High, East High School, went off east, got a government degree and came back, and have been involved in politics ever since. So I did work briefly for the governor and then in state government, moved over to kind of private campaign management as well as kind of an independent small business owner, went back to grad school and then worked full-time at our community college, teaching political science and freshman success classes. And then I've been at Cheyenne Regional Medical Center now for the past 2 years in human resources. So super excited to be trying to run for another term. I certainly love what I do here in the legislature and representing the people of Eastern Cheyenne. And hopefully they will have me back and I continue to do the people's work. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Zwanitzer. And now to the other candidate for House District 43, Mr. Mills. Please introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm Clayton Mills. I've lived here in Cheyenne for about 6 years now. I'm a father, grandfather, and a husband. I enjoy doing a lot of things in the outdoor. Wyoming presents that to me. And why I am running for this House district is quite simply, I don't think we're going in the right direction, and I think it's time for a change. I don't like what went on with the special session this year, and I think it's time to stand up and let's make a change for the better in Wyoming. So that's kind of why I'm running. Had I ever thought of this? No, this was not on my bucket list, but it's something that I think that I need to do, and I'm willing to put my foot forward and try. So that's what I'm here for.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. Well, we will get into the questions now, which you should have all received in advance, and we'll get through as many as we can in the time we have today. You will each have 90 seconds to respond to each of the questions. And we will start with the first question about Medicaid expansion. And the question is, do you support Medicaid expansion? Why or why not? And how do you think hospitals across the state will be impacted by your decision? And we will start with Mr. Zwanitzer, candidate for House District 43. You have 90 seconds.
No, sure. Thanks. I do support Medicaid expansion. I have, I think since 2014 was the turning point after we'd had 4 years of litigation and the Obamacare mandates, and really looked at, Wyoming. As you all know, we have a very rural state. We're aging rapidly. We have a higher rates of nicotine use, drinking, just really difficult health outcomes. And so, while I wouldn't tell you Medicaid expansion is a silver bullet, I do think on par that it is beneficial for our state, especially for our rural residents who don't have access to care. I do work at a hospital now and can tell you that we write off almost $5 million a year in bad debt and charity care and uncompensated care. And so I think we're already paying it into the system. It's just showing up in increased health premiums and difficult offloads into workers' comp and the Social Security disability. So I think people are paying it. If we know that it's through the Medicaid expansion to the 137%, at least in that respect, we can get our arms around it. It's more accountable and transparent to where that money's coming from, how we're spending it, and how we can track it. So I do think it'll provide better health outcomes as long as we don't spend more than that 10% match. The federal government yanks our money. I think we should yank ourselves out of it if we have to do that in the future. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Zwanitzer. And now to the other candidate for House District 43, Mr. Mills. Do you support Medicaid expansion?
I do not. I think the American taxpayer is getting to the end of taxes. Every time that we expand Medicare, all you do is you tax the middle class. When Obamacare went into effect here a few years ago, I'll speak for myself, and I'm going to tell you right now, my insurance premiums went up and my coverage dropped. So by expanding Medicaid, we're going to see that again. And we're expanding Medicaid at this point, for what I'm seeing, is to take in illegals and so forth. And I do not support that. I do not think Medicaid needs to be expanded, because I do not think the American taxpayer needs to pay any more money. That's what I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. And now to the candidate for House District 12, Mr. Goldfuss. What is your response?
I'm in favor of expanding Medicare, and I believe it impacts the very rural hospitals around our state in a very positive manner. I can't go quite into the nitty-gritty as Dan Zwanitzer did as to reasons and statistics and such, but I believe that, as he said, we're already paying it in a different way, so it'd be better to pay it directly and have it support itself.
Thank you, Mr. Goldfuss. We'll move on to our second question now, and that is, what role should the state play in facilitating charging stations for electric vehicles? And then why is that your opinion? And we will start with Mr. Mills, candidate for House District 43. On what role should the state play in facilitating charging stations for electric vehicles? Mr. Mills, you have 90 seconds.
Well, as a guy that works in the oil and gas industry, I'm going to tell you they have no role. Electric cars, when you study into the electric vehicle deal, it is a farce by all means. Now, if you live in downtown and you want to drive and live downtown and never go outside of town, knock yourself out. But as far as the state's role in putting in these charging stations, it's a total waste of money. Each of these stations costs between $20,000 and $25,000. And then you're going to have to pay to charge your car to do it. And you're going to have to be able to spend the time there to do it. So should the state facilitate this? I do not think so. I think that's one that we need to stay away from. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. Now to the other candidate for House District 43, Mr. Zwanitzer. What is your opinion on the role the state should play in facilitating charging stations for electric vehicles?
Thanks. I generally agree with Mr. Mills. I don't think the state really has a role in facilitating. The federal government has thrown $25 million at us to try to force us or incentivize us to build some, and we've realized that's not even cost effective. I think last we looked, there's about 1,000 electric vehicle owners in the entire state of Wyoming. 600 plus live in Teton County. And so it's not economically feasible for any really state effort or state taxpayer money. The electronic vehicles we do see in Wyoming are really tourists coming to Yellowstone, to Devil's Tower. And so if there are ways that, we can take the federal money and incentivize people to come through Wyoming instead of Utah or Idaho to get to our national parks, maybe they'll spend more money and more time here, but I don't think any state funds should be used to incentivize electric vehicles in Wyoming at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Zwanitzer. And now to the candidate for House District 12, Mr. Goldfuss. What are your thoughts on this?
As far as having stations all throughout the state, I'm not really all about that. I don't see it being practical, but along the interstates that run through our state, I could see incentivizing or encouraging it. I don't really feel like we could incentivize it, but we should definitely encourage it along the interstate so people passing through will pass through and can pass through, because that's money that might go around our state if we don't have it. But aside from having it on the interstate, I don't think it's practical or reasonable to do, and I don't think the state should be putting down a ton of money for it that way.
Thank you, Mr. Goldfuss. And we'll start with you, Mr. Goldfuss, for this next question, which is, what changes to Wyoming's tax structure would you support or oppose? You'll have each candidate will have 90 seconds for this response as well. What changes to Wyoming's tax structure would you support or oppose? Go ahead, Mr. Goldfuss.
As far as the state tax structure, I believe it's a rather complicated one, and I'm sure there's room for change in it, but I don't think in my first term I'm going to be spearheading an effort on that. I think it's better for me to sit back and observe a bit more about the tax structure before I suggest changing anything myself.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Goldfuss. We'll go to Mr. Mills, candidate for House District 43. 90 seconds on any changes to Wyoming's tax structure that you would support or oppose. Go ahead, Mr. Mills.
Well, Wyoming, believe it or not, in the 2015 edition of Richer State, Poorer States, Wyoming's already jumped into the top 15 as far as taxes per capita income. And Wyoming needs to reduce taxes. We have got to cut taxes. We have got to make this a friendly state. We've got to stop a lot of our frivolous spending and make it be more prudent for our own people. So do I have things? Yes, there's a lot of things that I want to see cut. And I think that the people of Wyoming deserve a less tax state to make it more appeasable to people that are moving here, which they are. But I think Wyoming has a reputation of being a great state, and we need to keep it by cutting the taxes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. And now to Mr. Zwanitzer. You have 90 seconds for your response.
Thanks, Carrie. And I don't have any specific proposals in regard to the tax structure. So I would just say that we continue to look at our tax structure. We know we have a tax structure that will not last us into the future. Our education spending is higher than our revenues coming in. So there's basically, two options. Either you increase revenues or you cut spending. And there's only so many different forms of taxation that you can throw around to increase taxation. And we've looked at all of them in the legislature. And as I think everyone knows, we're a very conservative Republican state, and we don't get tax increases through the state hardly ever. I think we've done two in my 18 years, a fuel tax and a lodging tax. So we have to look at how do we change the underlying structure. It's probably on spending, right? How do we spend? How can we cut spending? And really, if we do have some revenues, how can we invest those revenues for the future? Because ultimately, if you don't want to pay high taxes, we have to be doing better when it comes to investment revenues and making sure we have high yields. I think that's the way we make sure we don't get an income tax like many other states. Eventually, if we can't salvage our coal industry and keep it strong, that's almost 30% of our budget for coal, 50% when you add oil and gas in there. And so if those revenues start going down, we have real problems in the state. So I'm open to any options for changing our tax structure and looking at anything that's responsible as we move forward. The nice thing about the oil revenues coming in is we probably won't have to change or charge any taxes for the foreseeable future, which is good. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Zwanitzer. And we'll stay with you, Mr. Zwanitzer, to start off with this next question. And that is, what do you feel are the advantages or disadvantages of Wyoming issuing virtual or stable coin currency? You have 90 seconds, Mr. Zwanitzer.
And so for about 5 years now, Wyoming has really invested in this whole new technological area of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency and attracting these niche markets and trying to be the leader in the country or the world when it comes to cryptocurrencies and Bitcoins and transactional electronic, I guess, non-tangible assets. And so I worry, I think we've gone too far. I don't think we're ready for a stable coin, a Wyoming coin or a token, because I just don't think the majority of Wyoming is there yet. They just don't understand it. It's super complicated and technological. And so do I think maybe some outside companies would engage and it could be good? Yes, I just don't think we're at the point of knowing enough about it to really invest our resources in trying to have basically a Wyoming currency that's traded electronically and people can't easily track for other investment firms and firms outside of America. And so I'm not sure all of the technology is there to track it yet. So while I kind of support that we're moving in these innovative ways, I don't think it's ready for prime time to sell to the constituents of Wyoming quite yet.
Thank you, Mr. Zwanitzer. Now to the other candidate for House District 43, Mr. Mills. What are your thoughts on Wyoming issuing virtual or stablecoin currency?
I agree with Dan. I don't think we're there. I've been following Bitcoin for quite a little while. I kind of like to do a little investing. The problem I have with Bitcoin is there is nothing to back it. Okay, if Wyoming's going to offer a coin of its own, it had better be able to back it with a tangible means of finance. Okay, what are you going to have to back it? Gold, silver? What are you going to have to back this thing? I don't think the world's quite ready for it yet. I know Bitcoin itself, when you buy a coin, you get a coin. There's nothing backing it. Okay, so when I look at investing, I look at things that are tangible. I like gold. I like silver. I like something for my money. And when you buy a coin, you want to make sure it's worth something. So is Wyoming there yet? No. Is the United States there yet? No. So at this point in time, I would say no. They are not ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. And now to the candidate for House District 12, Mr. Goldfuss. You have 90 seconds.
Thank you. As far as electronic currency for Wyoming, I'm kind of confused as how that wouldn't really clash with the Constitution, having the one currency for US. But aside from my concerns there, my parents live just 20 miles outside of Cheyenne, and they're only now just getting decent internet, and neither of them are really too capable with computers or familiar with most electronic things in general. And I think people even further out are going to be really uncomfortable with this thing, and it won't have support in Wyoming for years to come at the least.
Thank you, Mr. Goldfuss. We'll go ahead and move on to the next question, which has to do with water. The question is, how should Wyoming ensure the state has water for current and future needs, including residential, mining, commercial, industrial, recreation, agriculture, and pretty much all of the things we could think of in this question. Mr. Mills, we will start with you. How should Wyoming ensure the state has water for current and future needs?
You know, this is one I'm not going to be your best advocate on. Does Wyoming need it? Yes. Our issue happened many years ago when the water rights were sold off. All right, Colorado did the same thing. Our states have sold water rights to gain for monetary gains. All right, now this water is going out of the state. We need to actually get a hold of it and stop it. Our farmers and ranchers and agriculture should come first, and the people of Wyoming should come first, not second. We have to find some way to get a hold of these contracts and get them changed or do something to make it a more viable solution for Wyoming. But right now, the state has an issue with that. And that's something that's going to have to be addressed, and we're going to have to get on top of. So, but I don't know a lot about that, so I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. Now to the other candidate for House District 43, Mr. Zwanitzer. How should Wyoming ensure the state has water for current and future needs?
And like Clayton, I don't think there's any amazing answer besides keep doing what we're doing. You know, we have a long history in Wyoming of trying to protect our water. As you know, it's a scarce resource throughout the western part of the country, and we're in a drought further south of us in Colorado, Utah, Nevada, Arizona, right? And so the pressure is going to continuously be on us. And so maybe the best thing we can do is continue to invest in good water lawyers to try to protect everything we can from going out of state. We have to look at our aquifers as well. But you know, there's no magic solution to protecting our water besides kind of continued vigilance. And a lot of it is through the judicial branch and litigation to make sure we get our fair share and don't lose it to Nebraska for endangered species or Montana for drilling endeavors. We've been pretty good, but we've lost a couple of cases, and we just have to be vigilant to not lose any more.
Thank you, Mr. Zwanitzer. And Mr. Goldfuss, candidate for House District 12, your thoughts on how Wyoming should ensure that the state has water for current and future needs?
Thank you. I believe they said, and I'll say it too, is keep doing what we've always done and continue to try our best to keep it in state. As he said, through water lawyers, make sure we've got good ones, that we don't just let it go and don't sleep on the topic. Continue putting money into the funds for the water, the planning, the construction, and the dams. It's just, I don't have any innovative ideas, just same old, same old.
Thank you, Mr. Goldfuss. And we'll start with you for this next question. And this one is about liquor licenses. What are your thoughts about changing the allocation process for liquor licenses? Mr. Goldfuss, you have 30 or 90 seconds.
I might only need 30. As far as liquor licenses are concerned, I hadn't been too well versed in this. It wasn't something I paid a whole lot of attention to in the past, but I wouldn't really be opposed to it. Liquor is a good source of income for taxes, and it sells well. It's a historical thing, and we could change it, but I'm not exactly sure how. Perhaps diversify the types that are allowed. I guess there's wholesale ones and ones for bars and grills, and people could just look at opening a different type and just skipping out on the package if they want to open their establishments.
Thank you, Mr. Goldfuss. Now we'll go to Mr. Zwanitzer, candidate for House District 43. You have 90 seconds.
Thanks. And so this is a dangerous question for me because it's in my committee right now that a lot of our municipalities are demanding and complaining we don't have enough liquor licenses for our cities and towns. And so I thought Derek actually hit it pretty well. There are different types of liquor licenses, the full retail, and then we have bar and grills as well. And so, one thought is to increase the number of bar and grills where you need 60% food and only 40% alcohol. So we can do that. Ultimately, you don't want a bar on every corner. And so I don't think I'm in favor of increasing the number of full retail liquor licenses. We don't need more packaged liquor stores probably than what we have in most of our municipalities. But if there are bar and grill licenses that we can increase, or there are ways to allow alcohol at other events. I know somebody in Cheyenne wanted like a Top Golf thing. So it was entertainment where you could have alcohol, but it wasn't a bar. And so we don't really have innovative things in our laws for these type of entities. And so we probably should look at that. We should look at being able to increase the cost of a liquor license. Right in Cheyenne, you can get it from the city council for $1,500, and then it's worth $250,000 on the private market. So we probably should be increasing the prices some, and we should look at whether or not you can transfer them on the private market or you have to give them back to the city. So it really affects 5 or 6 of our major cities in Wyoming, but it's not that much of a problem yet throughout Wyoming. So more to come, but we are looking at it and we'll have some solutions coming forward.
Thank you, Mr. Zwanitzer. And now to the other candidate for House District 43, Mr. Mills, your thoughts about changing the allocation process for liquor licenses.
Well, personally, I travel several states, okay? And when I go into these convenience stores all across these other states, and they are selling liquor, all right? They are not only food, but liquor. But you can buy liquor about anywhere. And I think people are going to buy it no matter what you do. So we just need to open it up. We need to stop allocating, open it up. If convenience stores want to sell it, let them sell it. Excuse me. I don't have an issue with that at all. As far as allocation, no, I don't think we need to do it.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. All right, we'll go on to our next question. And this has to do with education curriculum. The question is, what role should the legislature play in K-12 and higher education curriculum decisions? For this question, we'll start with Mr. Zwanitzer, candidate for House District 43. Mr. Zwanitzer, you have 90 seconds.
So I generally think the legislature should stay out of education curriculum decisions. We've had the State Board of Education for just over a century now, and I think that's probably the best place to try to keep education not political. Our Constitution, basically says the legislature shall not prescribe textbooks, and we've interpreted that to say the legislature should really not get involved in the day-to-day curriculum of what teachers are teaching. We do have some obligations when it comes to what we call the basket of goods. So we added, our most recent addition was computer science. So we basically said, hey, all of the schools in Wyoming should be offering computer science, but we left it up to the Board of Education and the local school districts to figure out how to make that work. And so maybe broad policy decisions like that should be the legislature. But when it comes to official curriculum standards, I try to support the State Board of Education, and then certainly local control when the money passes down to districts. I really think it's in the purview of each local district. We have 48 of them, which I still maintain is too many, but they should hopefully have an understanding and an idea of what the curriculum being taught in that part of Wyoming is, and it should conform, but it should be individualized for the kids, for the benefit of their learning.
Thank you, Mr. Zwanitzer. And now to the other candidate for House District 43, Mr. Mills. Your thoughts on the role the legislature should play in K-12 and higher education curriculum decisions.
As far as the higher education system, I agree with Dan. The legislature should not be involved in that. But however, the parents and the students need to get more involved in attaining the curriculum that they desire to be taught. That's what they should be getting into. Our system seems to be going the other way. So the people themselves have got to stand up and get a hold of this. As far as that's probably the easiest way to say it, but yes, legislature does not need to get involved in that. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. And now to the candidate for House District 12, Mr. Goldfuss, your thoughts.
Like they said, we've got a board at the state level for this, and we've had it for a long time. Teachers go to college for years to learn how to create their curriculums, and there's not much for us to do. There's already bodies developed to do this that do this well enough. That's at the K-12 level, and at the college level, well, you're talking people who've gone to college for much longer than even the K-12 level. And I'd like to believe that everyone who's teaching in a college is rather well qualified for that and capable of developing a curriculum that'll produce students who are effective.
Thank you, Mr. Goldfuss. And we will stick with the education topic for this next question. Recently, a survey reported in the Casper Star Tribune indicated that 65% of Wyoming teachers would quit if they could. Do you see this as a problem? Why or why not? And what can the legislature do to help local districts ensure all classrooms have qualified teachers? Mr. Mills, we will start with you for this question. You have 90 seconds.
I do see that as an issue, but the other thing I see as an issue is hiring good qualified teachers. We seem to have, and it's not just in Wyoming, it's all across the country, a problem of getting good qualified teachers. Can the legislature address this? Yes. It comes down to quite simply, most of them have stated if they get a job for hire money, they will do it. Wyoming is going to have to buck up here a little bit, and we're going to have to start paying our teachers. If we want to keep them, we're going to have to start paying them. And that's one of the big issues that's coming along with it. And one of the other issues is we have got to get our school system away from the federal government. I think if we would get away from it, there's a lot of frivolous spending there. I think we'd have a little money to throw back to the teachers. So yes, Wyoming needs to step up and help our teachers. I agree.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. And now Mr. Zwanitzer, to you.
Thanks. I don't have a great answer for this one besides saying let local school districts find the best way that works for that local school district to find teachers. We do have a requirement, in statute that we have highly qualified teachers, which means they have to have either received an education degree or gone on to a four-year degree with an additional year of classroom teaching experience and instruction. So the requirements are there to have highly qualified teachers. Yes, we throw a block grant at districts and they can balance that block grant to try to be able to pay teachers better. But I really think when you go around the state, every district has unique needs and problems. Some it comes to funding, some it comes to pay, some it comes to too many administrators, not enough special education. Every district is somewhat unique, and so I think we continue to fund the block grant and let individual districts figure out what's best for those individual districts and encourage them to come up with innovative ways on how to keep teachers. I think about 65% of people in any job profession would say they would quit if they could. But it still is concerning that, our teachers aren't happy and we should try to figure out why.
Thank you, Mr. Zwanitzer. And now our candidate for House District 12, Mr. Goldfuss, your thoughts on ensuring all classrooms have qualified teachers.
It's very clearly a problem if the majority of our instructors want to quit. As far as fixing that sort of thing, I think we should poll the teachers and see what it is that can be changed and see if it's feasible to make those changes to get retention up there and to make sure people actually want to be at their jobs. Because I know a lot of the instructors I had back in my school in Laramie County School District 1, Burns, Wyoming, they really liked teaching. Sure, they brought up every now and again that a lot of what they did came out of pocket. They were there for the students. They really liked to see their students, especially in years in the future where they run into them in public and like, oh, hey, I remember teaching you. And it's really nice to see those instructors. I'm glad that they're doing that, but if it means asking them and making some compromises to see what we can do to keep them there, then I think that's what we should go for.
Thank you, Mr. Goldfuss. We will stick with education once again, and we'll start with you, Mr. Goldfuss, for this question. Wyoming gets about $40 million per fiscal year for food nutrition service from the federal government. A recent article in the Casper Star Tribune and Wyoming Tribune Eagle indicated the Wyoming Department of Education does not plan to comply with the requirements and asked the state to reject the federal money for the school lunch program. How do you think the school lunch program can be funded from the state budget? What, if anything, would you recommend be reduced in the budget to pay for school lunches? Mr. Goldfuss, you have 90 seconds.
Oh, that's a fun question for me. As far as what we can cut, I don't know. I'm not intimately familiar with the budget in Wyoming, but I think we should just make sure no kids have to go hungry. A lot of the kids in my district are on the free and reduced lunches. I'm not terribly sure what else to say about this. I guess I'll have to end it at that one.
Then we'll go to Mr. Mills, candidate for House District 43. Your thoughts on rejecting federal money for the school lunch program and how that could potentially be funded through the state budget, and then have the budget reduced in other areas to pay for school lunches. Mr. Mills?
You know, this is the point in time when we need to tell the feds adios. All right. They have stepped over their boundary on this. Wyoming needs to get away. We need to take the NEA and the feds out. We need to get them out. Wyoming needs to take their education back. We need to be teaching our kids a good curriculum. Can we do this? Yes. It's going to come down to making some cuts in some other programs. And we also have the rainy day fund to fall back on. You're looking at about $100 million a year just to get this back. And right now, the federal government with their, what do you want to call it, their little mandates is costing us around 143 million. It would be cheaper for Wyoming to take this back and get the feds out and we take this over. So can Wyoming do it? Yes. Yes, we can. We just got to work together and get this done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. And now to the other candidate for House District 43, Mr. Zwanitzer.
Thanks. I think when the time comes, the legislature is not going to say no to the $40 million from the federal government, right? Just so we don't have to give school lunch to someone who's LGBT and deny them school lunch. So 40 million, I mean, it's about a half-cent sales tax statewide. And so I know people are passionate about this, but ultimately money talks in the state, right? And so if you're telling people that they have to pay a half-cent more sales tax to cover the federal government's share of school lunch, just because we don't want to investigate harassment for LGBT students, I don't think that's going to get to the legislature. I do think it's a very political issue right now. Certainly right now, it's just a notice of intention on how they're going to interpret the rule for another 90 days. I am certain that we will join with other states and file a lawsuit come September when that rule is potentially finalized or at least open for litigation. And so by the time it gets to legislature in February, I'm fairly certain either the feds will back down or will step up, but we're going to ensure no kid goes hungry. And I don't think we're going to find an extra 40 million hitting, in our coffers that we're going to spend on it without at least trying to litigate it all the way first. So I think the political issue of it will calm down. Obviously, none of us like federal coercion or blackmail that we get a lot in Wyoming, but the proper remedies in the courts. And I'm certain we will fight it in the courts as soon as we're ready to here when it becomes final in the Federal Register in a couple months.
Thank you, Mr. Zwanitzer. Mr. Zwanitzer, we'll start with you. This is actually our final question before closing statements. Actually, I think we are going to go to closing statements now that I look at the time.
Okay.
And Dr. Meister Emmerich's face right now when I said we were going to do one more question. So for the closing statements, basically we're just asking, if elected, what do you hope to achieve? Strengths you'd bring to the position, and why voters should choose you over your opponent. So each candidate will have 2 minutes for their closing. Mr. Zwanitzer, go ahead.
No, thanks. And I think the strengths I bring to the position really are, my incumbency. I'm a committee chairman. Our Speaker of the House has moved on. Our Speaker Pro Tem is not running again. We're losing Chairman Wilson here in Laramie County, which is a huge loss. And so the institutional knowledge, just keeping that in the body, I think is important. Also, when you've been around, as long as I have, which I know is good and bad, all the issues, you kind of know the arguments for and against, but really what we're seeing lately is a lack of civility and decorum in politics. And so having people in here who remember what it used to be like when we had a little higher level of respect and held people accountable for what they said on the floor and their actions outside of the legislature, I think is really important to kind of keep that drumbeat going. So, this will be the first time probably in almost 8 years that we've had surplus revenues, that we can fill some of the cuts that we've had to make over the past and invest in our future. Hopefully some new elementary schools in Laramie County, hopefully put some of that money in savings. And so I wanted to do another term because I was here when we had a lot of money in 06 to 10, probably too much, but we did some amazing things like the Hathaway and built new schools throughout Wyoming. And so getting to be here after 4 terms where there's money coming in again, and I know it's hurting people with inflation and high gas prices, but there's a lot that we can do as a legislature to move Wyoming forward, fill some of the gaps, and for our elderly and our disabled retirees, and do some good work. And so I'm kind of excited to come back, hopefully for another term, and really do some good work for Wyoming.
Thank you, Mr. Zwanitzer. Now to the other candidate for House District 43, Mr. Mills, your closing remarks.
Yeah, I think I bring to this this position a life of skill. I've served on other boards in other areas. We're going to have to make a choice here, and the people of Wyoming want to see their taxes go down, and that's what I hear more and more. So we're going to have to start making some cuts, and I'm willing to tackle that. I'm willing to get in the ring and fight for the constituents in our district. I think this is going to be a enlightening experience, and I totally look forward to it. Serving the Wyoming people would be an honor. So with that, I'll just close. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. And now to the candidate for House District 12 for his closing remarks, Mr. Goldfuss.
Thank you. So as far as what I hope to achieve is I hope to bring a voice to the south side of Cheyenne. It's my understanding that the incumbent in my district has co-signed plenty of things, but I don't believe he's actually passed anything with his name on it as the primary. I don't think he does anything in our district other than help other districts pass their agendas. I don't really feel like that's what we should be going for with our representative. I think our representative should be a bit more active in passing these sort of things. And the greatest strengths I bring to the position, I suppose student government would probably be the best thing I have. Is I was the president. I met with the president of the college. I've met with the vice president of the college. I was in the board of trustees, college council. The SBAC fund allocation process was another big thing I was a part of. And I'm fairly familiar with parliamentary procedure. As far as promoting civility, I'd have to lead by example. I mean, just be respectful of each other and, you know, yelling. I've been told my opponent, the incumbent, has not been the greatest example for that, and I hope to turn that around for our district. And I guess why I should be chosen over my opponent is I don't think he's the best fit, as I've said with my previous remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to all of the candidates for joining us tonight in a very busy evening. And we'll go back to our host for the evening.